Speaking of rural, I got a joke for you guys. You ready for this? Kind of real estate related. So if you walk on your front porch naked and nobody sees you, it's rural. If you walk on your front porch naked and someone calls the cops, it's suburban. If you walk on the front porch naked and nobody says anything, it's urban. If you walk on the front porch naked and your neighbor's naked as well, that's Florida. Thought you'd like that, Jay.
Not funny.
Welcome to Drunk Real Estate.
Grab a drink and enjoy the show.
Hey there, and welcome to episode 37 of Drunk Real Estate. I am Kyle Wilson, Ashley Wilson's husband, and the gang's all together again. Welcome back, Mr. Mauricio Raoul. How's it going, buddy?
Good to be back, man. I missed you guys, missed my my routine, but it was a great trip, but happy to be back and looking forward to an amazing episode.
Yeah, you replaced us with a dinner. I saw we were right in the middle of recording, and you're sending us text messages from dinner.
Yeah, it's my dad's birthday. I threw a little soiree at one of the restaurants and had all of his cousins and brothers and sisters and me and my brother. So it was fun. But yeah, that was the issue. There's no way I could have pulled it off, even if I tried.
So did you bring back any good wines?
I did not. I had a lot of good wines there, but they're pretty freaking expensive. Like I actually looked at the Don Melchor, Jay, that you and I have shared on a couple of occasions. Really, really, probably the best Chilean wine out there. It's just freaking expensive, and it's no cheaper in Chile. It's still a couple $100 over in Chile, which is a lot of money down there.
So what are you drinking now then?
Today I'm drinking, it's actually a little bit off because I forgot that I popped it before I left. It's been 2 weeks since I originally did the whole Corbin thing, but just a little off. But my Lorenzi, but I'm doing the Syrah this time. This is the Temecula. This is the number one wine producer in Temecula, which is about 20 minutes from my house. And it was pretty good when I first had it, but now that it's been open for 2 weeks, it's a little bit, But overall, Lorenzi's a good wine producer if you guys haven't tried it.
Can't say I've ever had wine that was 2 weeks old. Like that's
well, with the Corbin, though, you're supposed to be able to drink it like weeks, if not months later, but clearly that's not the case.
This tastes a little different. Jay, how you doing over there? You look, speaking of off, you look a little off right now.
I'm sick as a dog. I woke up this morning not feeling great, and it's just been going downhill all day. So whatever Mauricio had a couple weeks ago and you had a couple weeks ago, I think I got it.
You guys have, he passed mono onto you, huh?
Possibly. Didn't help that we own our neighbor's house, and he's been living in it for a couple of years, and he moved out last week, and we went in there to empty it out, and it was filled with, he's a hunter, or he was a hunter. He's in his 80s now. And it was filled with stuffed animals. And I don't mean like kid stuffed animals. I mean adult stuffed animals. And AJ, I think I need you to come down.
What's the difference between an adult stuffed animal and a kid stuffed animal, Jay?
A kid stuffed animal is made out of material and stuffing. And an adult stuffed animal is made out of meat and stuffing.
Oh, okay. I see. So they're all hanging up on the wall is what you're saying.
AJ, you want to explain this to him?
I think he's got it.
No,
I hope so.
The way you said adult stuffed animals, I'm like, is he going somewhere else with this?
Oh,
They're the real deal. The real animals.
So I think these animals, like sitting in cabinets for the last 30 years, like they're harboring some diseases that I think I just caught.
Wow, that took a turn. So I assume you're not drinking.
I am drinking some Publix decaf green tea.
Geez, that mug's as big as your head.
Maharaja. Nope, Guadalajara.
Guadalajara.
All right, well, hopefully we can keep you awake this entire time. AJ, how's it going, man?
It's going good. Can't complain.
So I got your assistant to switch your mic back to the other side so I can see Ernie. Just wanted to say hi to Ernie.
Yeah, we don't want to block the view. I mean, we can block this view right here all we want, but not that one.
Let me guess. Red Solo Cup Diet Coke?
I got you. You know it.
Ice? No ice?
Oh, yeah, ice. I'm a big ice guy. You know, you got to keep that Diet Coke fountain, Diet Coke. It's got to be chilled.
Do you have the good ice? Like the little?
Oh no, we have the good ice. The little. Yep. Oh yeah. Jay knows what's up.
Oh, my wife got me a good ice machine for
You mean
for
crushed
Christmas.
ice? Is that crushed ice or what is that?
It's not crushed. It's like the real small pieces that like when you bite into them, they crunch.
They're like almost like little tablets, like ice. It's awesome.
It's Mauricio, it's the last step before private plane. Like when you get super rich, then you get the crushed ice. And then right after that, the next step is private planes. So apparently Jay's almost there.
Let's be clear. The good crushed ice machines are thousands upon thousands of dollars. We don't have a really good one, but you can spend a lot of money on good ice.
It's a big deal. It's
I've
important.
never seen someone work so hard to try and act not rich. Okay, well, speaking of not rich, I am drinking airplane bottles of Pink Whitney vodka tonight.
That's cute.
I got multiples here. We went on that skiing trip with my kids, and apparently my wife thought we were just going to be hammered the entire time. So like on the way down, she picked up like 40 bottles of these mini Pink Whitney and for like drinking while we were out skiing. And I haven't been on a that was my first ever skiing trip since I was like 10. And so I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is going to be a good time. We ended up drinking like 6 of them. So now I have like 30 airplane bottles of Pink Whitney. So I thought I'd make them useful. I played hockey with him, by the way. Ryan Whitney came up. He's the one who it's named after. Little fun tidbit there.
Did he start the company or did they just name it after?
Yeah, he started the company. Supporting fellow hockey players. There you go, Pink Whitney.
Is that your plug? Is that your plug for the evening?
No, not at all. They don't need plugs. They're doing really well, from what I understand. All right, should we get into this?
Let's do it.
So back in December, the Fed predicted they would be cutting 3 times in 2024, but the market didn't believe them and priced in 7 rate cuts at the time. Now, as the likelihood of the first cut keeps getting pushed back further and further, and we have an election looming, people are starting to question whether we'll see rate cuts at all this year. So, Jay, looking at where the economy is today, should we be prepared for a full year-long pause?
Okay, so let's ease into this thing. Instead of jumping right into the Fed, I think it's important that we talk a little bit about what has been going on in the economy recently, because that ultimately is what drives the Fed decision. And when we look at the economy, there's good, there's bad, there's ugly. Let's start with the good. So home prices up. So last week we saw, I think it was November, home prices, Case-Shiller data up 6.1% on the year, 0.2% on the month. So home prices are still going up.
Why is that a good thing? If you don't own a home and you're trying to buy a home, that sounds like a terrible idea.
Well, from the standpoint of economic data, anytime hard assets are going up in value, that's typically is a sign of a good economy. If I told you home prices were down 40%, would you think that was a good economy?
It'd be great if I was looking to buy a house.
Well, yeah, but we're talking about the economy. We're not talking about necessarily the people in the economy.
I'll take it easy on you today, Jay, because you're not feeling 100%. So I'll give you a pass.
I think we can all agree that no matter what happens in the economy, it's going to be good for some people and bad for others. But I think home prices going up, again, I agree. It may not be good long term. It may contribute to inflation and hardship. But from a purely economic standpoint, home prices going up is a sign that, well, potentially a sign. When we really dig into the data and we realize there's an inventory problem, and we'll talk about that, it may not be as good a sign, but it's a sign that the economy is not doing too terribly. Number 2, new home sales. So home prices, we're typically talking about existing homes, but then there's new home sales. And new home sales had a huge month in January as well. So up 1.5% annually, 100,000 more new homes sold in January than in December. So new home sales are also like going gangbusters. GDP, so total output of the economy, we saw a revision to Q4 data. We were at 3.3. We're at 3.2% growth in Q4 based on the first revision. So that's telling me that as of Q4 at least, Americans were still spending and the economy was going strong. And then here's the huge one. So last month, incomes were up 1% for the month. Now, that we can temper that a little bit. by the fact that Social Security payments increased to accommodate inflation. So that was a large part of the increase in incomes. But there are a lot of people who rely on Social Security, and so an increase of 1% a month.
Well, and it's pretty standard too for businesses to reevaluate, like at the beginning of years, to look at salaries and look at expenses and stuff like that. So it's not surprising at all.
Not surprising, but still 1% is a pretty big increase. So that's the good. Now, looking at the bad, we saw savings rates come out last week for last month. We were up 3.8%, which good. Savings is going up, but that's the lowest it's been in years. So people are not saving money anymore. Consumer spending, so slower. People are spending less money. So last month, we were up 0.2%, which was the lowest increase in the last 3 months. And a lot of that spending was on credit. Inventory for home sales, so pending home sales. We talk about home prices going up and that being a good thing. Well, it's a necessary thing when pending home sales, when people aren't actually listing houses for sale or putting houses under contract. We were down 4.9% from December to January. So pending home sales, which were already tremendously low, were down again. Auto sales were down 4% annualized last month, which was a surprise to a lot of people. And then consumer confidence ticked down for the first time in about 4 months. So that's the good and the bad. On the ugly side, at least for us as real estate investors, it's exactly what you said, Kyle. And that's that it looks like the Fed might be pivoting on their pivot. So the pivot a couple months ago was that we've maxed out on rates, and the next move was likely down. And as the Fed said, they were pricing in 3 rate cuts for the year. The market was pricing in closer to 7 cuts for the year. Now we're hearing a lot of large business owners, CEOs, and some large bankers, representatives of some large banks, suggesting we may not see any cuts this year. And I think it's way too early to predict that. Things can change quickly. But just the fact that we went from 7 rate cuts 2 months ago to potentially 0 rate cuts now, the change in sentiment is absolutely huge. So that's kind of what I want to talk about here. If we look at the market, and I'm going to
let's look at the market, because based on that, if you had told me, at the beginning of the year, well, I would have originally said, everything's priced to perfection. Like if we don't get 7 rate cuts and the whatever the pricing of the stock market, that's a problem. And I always thought it was going to be a little bit less, but the stock market, I don't know if that's what you're going to throw up, but like the probability now has gone, maybe 3, maybe 0, whatever it is. It's definitely less than 7. And yet the stock market's going bananas.
Yeah, stock market's going crazy. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're still seeing inflation. There's no end in sight to this bull run in the economy. And I know, again, we can argue if we're in a recession or not, but the data all makes it look like a bull market. And it doesn't appear that hard assets are going down in value anytime soon. So people are piling into the stock market and real estate and crypto and all those other things that I know you love, Mauricio. But so here's CME Fed Watch. This is kind of one of the places we can go to see where investors' thoughts and sentiment are with respect to what the Fed is likely to do over the next couple meetings. And this is the March meeting next month. This will be the first meeting from now. And back in December, there was about a 50% chance of a rate cut priced in. Now we're at about 97% chance of no rate cut factored in for March. So basically, there's 0 chance we're going to get a rate cut in March. There's no meeting in April. So if we go to May, there's still an 80% chance, the market's pricing in an 80% chance of no rate cut in May. Which
is a huge change even just over the last
couple of weeks. Exactly. Yeah. If you go back like a month, if you go back to February, basically there was over 50% chance. The market was predicting over a 50% chance of a rate cut by May.
And by the way, the stock market action doesn't help, right? I mean, if the stock market, that's kind of like what the Fed wanted to have is kind of a slow reduction in the stock market, like an orderly reduction in the stock market, an orderly reduction in house pricing. And none of those are happening. It's like,
it shows what they're scared of. And so like, this goes back to how I'm like, I don't think they're going to cut rates. And I thought they'd cut them a little, but they're not going to be aggressive. The Fed just won't do it. They're too scared to be in a Paul Volcker situation. And so just the mere mention of cutting rates sent markets flying. That is a clear signal to the Fed that this economy cannot handle lower rates. And I think that, when you look at it, the sentiment is more important to the Fed than anything else. And so they were so nervous to even mention cutting rates before. Basically, that confirmed their worst fears. They can't do it. And I think that, it's very clear that they don't care if there's pain in certain areas. Overall, the overall economy, we can thrive on interest rates at this well. It doesn't mean I agree with it. Doesn't mean that's what I want. But as of right now, at interest rates at the highest they've been in our lifetime, the economy won't stop. So the Fed is in a position where they're not going to lower interest rates. And if they do, it'll be just insignificant.
Well, they're getting to the point where they're going to have to lower interest rates at the same time as bad news or something, because they can't just lower interest rates when things are going well, because we've shown like market wants to party, right? Like they're just waiting for any good news, anything. And the moment we even lower it 25%, party's on. Everyone's popping champagne. The market's going to rip again. So they're going to have to, they're in this really tough spot. Like they can't, even if they think that they should be lowering rates right now, even if they're looking at projecting data going forward and saying, oh, we should be lowering rates right now, the market's going to overreact the moment they do. So they're in a tough spot where they kind of have to wait for something bad to happen and then be like, okay, now we can lower it.
What's really crazy, and Jay, I'd love your thoughts on this, because this actually doesn't make sense to me. And I don't have an answer, but it's just an observation. I actually didn't, I've been gone. I've been out of the country for, about a week or so. But yes, the stock market, all the sort of the risk on assets are going through the roof. Bitcoin today or yesterday hit almost, I don't know if it hit the all-time high or it's going crazy. But you know what else hit an all-time high was gold, which is generally looked at something as hey, when things are tough, then people kind of go to their safe haven of gold. The 10-year yield is still, it's not, it's popped back up a little bit since it bottomed out at 3.8. It's at 4.1, but based on what it was by October of last year, it was about 5. Now it's back down to 4.1. So people are going into treasuries as well. That's what's driving the yields down. So we got gold and you've got the 10-year treasury, which are typically considered sort of safe havens. When people are a little afraid, they don't know what to do, they put it into gold, they put it into the treasury. And yet people also freaking bidding up the stock market, bidding up, Bitcoin. It's everything's freaking going up. I don't know if anything is going down, Jay. What's going on?
Yeah. And so, I mean, you guys nailed it. And for anybody that's listening, it's not just, this is conjecture of the four of us sitting here. This is literally what the Atlanta Fed president said yesterday. So he came out yesterday. You guys probably don't even know this, but you basically said the exact same thing he said. He basically said, look, businesses seem poised to pounce. That was his word, pounce, the minute that rates are lowered. And the concern is that if there's even a single rate cut, that there's going to be so much money that moves into the market that we're going to see that fresh wave of inflation again. Yep. And so to Kyle's point, I think they need cover to lower rates. And that cover is going to either be something bad happens, inflation comes down significantly, which we're not seeing, or there's another sign of recession. And barring that, I think we're not going to have any rate cuts for the near future, because again,
here's my problem though, is that is inflation's already below 2%. If you take any other
below 3%,
no, below 2. If you look at any other measure of inflation that doesn't have lagging indicators, so if we've already gone through how they measure inflation with surveys and all this other bullshit. We know there's better ways out there. So you can go and you could look at the Penn State Index I brought up before. You can go, there's this other really good it's not crypto-based, blockchain-based inflation calculator. It's called Trueflation. Both of those have already dipped below 2%. And so if you look at these other indicators, we're already real time below 2%. And I don't think the Fed is dumb. They know that their data isn't the best. They're just kind of handcuffed into using it. And they're looking at these other indicators and they know it's already below 2%. We're actually to the point where it hit 2% months ago and we're starting to tick back up because we're seeing this real time. Rents are going up now. Rents bottomed out, went down, we're stagnant, and now they're actually coming back up. So real time, we're seeing that come back up. So I'm concerned that if they're not acting on real time data and they're acting off of data from, on average it's 7 months lagging, then that's when we're going to get in trouble.
Well, the problem is though, you can't do that because those indicators are affected by seasonality. They're affected by so many things. So the Fed can't make decisions off a 3 or 4 month window, especially when inflation has been, because first of all, because inflation went down to what is more like below standard for a few months, that doesn't take away that the pricing today is still embedded with all the increases. So prices aren't going down, they haven't softened. So if the Fed does something that makes prices go up on top of where they are today, consumers are crushed. So they need to see consistent price stability, and they would like to see price reduction both on Main Street, but also on Wall Street in all assets. We have inflation in asset pricing. We have inflation that we're still sitting on top of, which is just literally crushing people because it's not going backwards. So they're more scared of starting it all back up because we couldn't take it. If they start it up, they can't turn the ship around. So all of a sudden, then we're going to have how many more months of 8% inflation if they do that, and that will break the economy. That's what they're scared of.
Kyle, are you telling me that the price of eggs have only gone up 2%? Is that what you're telling me? Because I went to the store the other day, buddy, and I didn't see any reduction of egg prices. Just so we know.
No. The only thing I'm saying is that their data is lagging. It's kind of accepted that it's lagging, and it's about 7 months lagging. So what we're seeing right now is we're seeing inflation from, especially in rents and these homeowner equivalent surveys and stuff like that we're seeing data from 7 months ago. So we're making real-time decisions based off of 7 months ago data. And if we were making real-time decisions based off of real-time data, there's other services that measure real-time inflation, what's going on right now. And those are already dipped below 2%. We've already achieved that. The problem is that like, I don't know, like I think maybe the Fed just has to start, instead of during one of these talks, they just have to start pointing out what Jay did. Like, here's all the bad things that are going on. The economy's not that great. Yes, there's all this data, but there's all this other shitty data over here. Like, we need to start paying attention to that and kind of just plant the seed that everything's not rosy.
Jay, I gotta ask you a question. I know you're like half dead over there with that, and I appreciate you really sucking it up and doing this for us. But like, here's a question for you. I'm sure you've thought of this, but what are the odds that by the end of the year the Fed actually increases rates?
I think.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know anybody talking about that. Not that I'm, whatever, but I'm just wondering either they come out and raise rates or at least start talking the talk. Because it's all about talking the talk. Because the minute the Fed comes out and say, you know what, guys, I know we talked about doing 2 or 3 rate cuts, but hey, things are going crazy. The stock market still goes up. Everything's going up. We may not only, I know we paused, but maybe we're starting to think about, and that's all they need to say. We're starting to think about maybe one more or a couple more increases. And I'm just curious as to, I mean, I know AJ,
that's my point. All they would have to do is say that, though. They don't actually have to do it. People just react so much on them, what they say. So let's paint some less rosy things. Let's say, hey, we might raise. Hey, the economy's not great here. Hey, instead of just like coming out and saying, oh, everything's great, we're working towards that. We just have to pause for a bit and like toe the line. Like let's get crazy.
The challenge there is that we're in an election year, which I know we talked about a couple of weeks ago. So it's like, do they really want to meddle and start doing something a little bit like a 360 or 180, I guess, and increasing or talk about increasing rates, in the middle of an election year?
Yeah, we talked about this back in December, and I think, if I recall, we all kind of agreed that the Fed made a big mistake in December when they came out and basically changed their tone from really strong language around, hey, rates higher for longer, to real dovish language around, hey, we're looking at it every day, and when it's time to cut, we're ready to cut. And I think just that change in language has changed the sentiment in the market enough that people are acting differently. And people are spending differently. And so do I think it's likely that we're going to see a rate hike before the end of the year? No, but I agree with AJ. It's possible. And you, Mauricio, I think it's possible.
It's not non-zero.
It's not non-zero.
100% it's not non-zero.
Yeah. And so
it's a non-zero number.
But to Kyle's point, I mean, yes, there probably are better measures of inflation out there. And it's funny, depending on who you talk to, some will say it's a lot higher than what the Fed is saying. Some will say it's a lot lower. But here's the problem that the Fed has. for the last how many decades, I don't know the answer, but I'm guessing it's at least decades, core PCE has been their preferred choice for data for determining if we're seeing inflation or not. And if they were suddenly going to say, hey, we're no longer using that measure, we're going to use another measure. If they say we're going to use a measure that shows that inflation's a lot lower, oh, okay, so the Republicans are going to freak out and say you're in bed with the Democrats. If they go and they say we're going to use an inflation measure that shows that inflation's higher, the Democrats are going to freak out and say you're in bed with the Republicans. And so the Fed's in a no-win situation, and they're going to lose all credibility if today they decide they're going to change their preferred measure of.
But this is like these other measurements. They're not changing core PCE. Actually, the Penn State one is actually called. You could do core PCE. You could do PCE. You could do CPI. They measure the exact same thing the exact same way. They just take out the lag effect. They just look at it a different way. They don't use surveys. They do the same weighting. They do all that stuff. So it's like my thing is it's just a lag. It has nothing to do with, yes, and AJ was not in his head about how there's other people saying that inflation's a lot higher. Yeah, if you take other measurements and other ways of measuring what inflation is, that's different. I'm just saying pick something that's without the lag effect. Like we're in 2024. Like we don't need to be doing phone surveys.
I can just imagine watching CNN or Fox News after they come out and they say, we're changing the data that we look at to define inflation. And basically half the country now is going to, right now, I think most of the country doesn't trust the Fed, but it's going to get much worse if they were to come out today and say, just coincidentally, we've decided that now's the right time to use a different measure. So I'm not arguing that you're wrong. I don't know. I don't know if inflation's higher or lower than what the Fed is saying, but I don't think that the Fed is in any position, especially in an election year, to start coming out and
I don't think I've ever suggested that they switch it. I think my thing was that they just keep it in consideration even behind closed doors. Like they okay, we're not just holding just to like all right, these jobs numbers and core PCE, those are the only two things we're looking at. If as long as those two data points are, then that's what we're making our decisions are. No, let's look at the everything in its entirety. Let's look at alternative measures of things, and let's just be a little bit smart about it.
But this is one of the problems they're doing is we also have historic low unemployment and we have incomes rising. So the problem is you cannot affect inflation if you do not change the inputs. So when they look at it and say, we open up the money, we have historic low unemployment, we have incomes rising, that is just a machine to spit consumers into consumer mode. And when you look at that, they're going, our littlest changes here. So let's say the Fed, first of all, they're taking that well-rounded, but they're also taking the surveys. They want sentiment. And right now, if you poll Americans, they think inflation's crazy because prices are still high. So in their minds, whether it's real or not today, they think inflation is a big problem. So the Fed also takes in just purely sentiment. Whereas if we make this change, all of a sudden we have the consumers will go crazy because they have money, they all have jobs, and they're already saying that inflation's a problem. They're stuck in a really bad spot here.
They are, and I think they exacerbated it in December. We all knew it happened at the time. And I mean, to Kyle, to your point, let's say they do consider it behind closed doors. What are they going to do? I mean, do you disagree with Mauricio that if they decide to cut because all of this hidden data indicates they should cut? I mean, is that not going to absolutely drive the markets nuts?
They got to plant some cover. They got to start instead of just driving home. Oh, we want to see these numbers come down. We want to see these. They got to start putting in some seeds of doubt about stuff, and they got to start saying let's talk about what real rates are. Let's talk about they bring it up before, like the difference between their rates, the Fed rates, and what real rates are, and the real rates are that difference between inflation and the Fed rates. Well, every time that they pause and the inflation comes down, the real rates go up. So technically they're still raising real rates right now because inflation keeps coming down and rates are staying the same. So let's bring that up. Let's talk about those things so that they do have some cover for, okay, two meetings from now. Oh, remember what we said 2 meetings ago? Well, we're just enacting that. There's nothing to see here. And it's not just going to be some immediate pivot that, oh, we're just cutting right now because we feel like it.
And the other crazy thing is if they cut rates, businesses are going to start hiring. And to hire with unemployment where it is today, wages are going to go through the roof, which sounds
You
great.
keep bringing up unemployment. I argue unemployment too. Like if anyone can go and get an Uber job right now and work 3 hours a week and they're considered employed. Like I don't necessarily, labor participation rates still below what it was 2019.
And are we counting the immigrants coming across? Is that something we're counting as well, or is that not in the numbers?
Do we want to roll into that next, right?
Where he's sort of like, move on.
Well, I was going to hit AJ next, but do you want to skip right to the immigration?
You can do AJ. AJ may have to go grab dinner or something. Either way,
I had to pick between you two. I'd do AJ. So
it's because of the beard, Mauricio. Maybe if you dyed your hair red.
It'll give people a reason to stick around.
Soulless. Okay, so I was driving through the suburbs the other day, and I drove by this what used to be a shopping mall. I noticed it was now a self-storage complex. So naturally, what do? I text AJ. I'm like, hey, AJ, have you ever taken a shopping mall and converted it into self-storage? And he was like, no, I haven't. I've tried to, but I haven't been able to do it. But I'm still actively trying to do this. And so we've talked previously about like office conversions in the past, office to multifamily, office to other things. But it's evident no matter what, even when you look at malls, that when you drive around, the landscape of real estate's kind of seeing this shift. So AJ, are we expecting to see things like local malls eventually become these mass storage centers all over the place? Is that what we have to look forward to?
So, it's kind of interesting. I've converted big box stores, Kmart's, things like that, and office buildings into storage. But the malls are really tricky. And the malls are tricky for a few reasons. Most of the malls aren't completely empty. So they may have a few tenants in there. So they may look dead and they may be dead. But malls are a conglomerate of lease agreements in one location. So the problems we found are twofold with storage in malls. First of all, yes, you can do it and people are doing it. One of the first problems you have is just because you can convert something doesn't mean it's a good market to have for that asset. So a lot of people get confused when they're like, oh, I think I could get this at cheap and charge these prices. That's assuming the market is good, right? And when you convert something, you don't get to pick where it's at. So the first hurdle that you have is a lot of the malls that are going under, well, they're also going under for a reason. And that is lots of times not good conditions for redevelopment. So that's the first thing that people forget about, right? They're going under for a reason. Now, when you look at the malls, the second problem is even if I was to take something, malls are ginormous. A storage facility, even at, I'm building 2 at 150,000 square feet to 200,000 square feet. That is monstrous.
Give us some context there. Is that the size of a Costco?
Yeah. So that's, like a super Kmart. That's like 200,000 square feet empty. We're talking rentable square footage. So you're talking 1,300 doors or more. And that's with big doors. If we were to use small doors, it would be 2,000 or way more than that.
Average Costco warehouse is 146,000 square feet. They range from 80,000 to 230,000.
Yeah. So what we're building in rentable units is 35% bigger than those. Now, when you look at malls, though, malls are way bigger. You're talking sometimes millions of square feet. So you would only, if you were to use storage, you're not going to build something generally 150, like we're talking. Those two projects that I'm doing are huge. You're not going to do that. You're going to do something more like 80,000 square feet is probably more average, maybe 65,000. So all of a sudden you have a mall that's 1 million square feet. You have tenants and you want to utilize part of that mall for a different function, whether that is self-storage or anything else. The first problem you run into is the lease agreements that dictate the usage of the other tenants. So there's provisions in malls that you need to help other anchor tenants. So like if you're going to come in and buy something, you have to have a certain amount of walk-through traffic. You have to have purchasing goods. You have to have all of these things so it helps the other tenants. Well, other forms of real estate that aren't retail don't meet that. So you have a first carving it out in that conglomerate is hard anyways. The next thing you have is you have parking lots. You have like all of this empty, weird space. So the malls are, it's just so big, you run into problems with that. Now they have been looking at and doing a lot what people that could do it in storage. We've done it and are doing it. They're also doing apartments. So I was looking at mixed use apartments and retail, but even the big malls, not so much. The strip malls, we're looking at it, but there's a lot of arguments for the repurposing and conversion into help the housing crisis, and they're doing that. So there's some in Minneapolis. I've seen it in St. Paul where they're putting in lots of actually units. There's a nonprofit company called Enterprise that showed that even just 10% of the nation's strip mall space could provide over 700,000 new multifamily units. Now, once again, that comes into a problem though. Malls weren't made for that. So they're not built to be multifamily. They're not built to be storage. So there's an incredible cost when you're talking about, we're going to take an empty box and we're going to build, 300 units of living in it, right? Or we're going to turn this into a storage facility that has low traffic, and all the other tenants are like, that's opposite of what we want. We want high traffic. So the complexity of malls, because of the leases, the tenants that are there, the access point, they're covered in huge parking areas around them, and the sheer size makes it way more complex than people, I think about. They're just like, well, why don't you just turn it into something else? Well, first of all, that something else may not have any demand in that location. Nobody may even need it there. And then the cost, lots of times it's easier just to buy land and build ground up.
Well, I was just going to say that we found actually the when you do the numbers on it, you pretty much have to get an office or a shopping mall for the cost of the land to be able to make it worthwhile. And like the conversion is so expensive, and to your point, it's so complicated that you're just basically buying land.
And you have to take into account those leases. We have a shopping mall walking distance from me, used to be like the premier mall of Sarasota, called Sarasota Square Mall. And it's been dead for at least 5 years. I've been here for 5 years, and they finally got bought. And so they're tearing it down. They're building 1,200 units of residential. They're building outdoor space. They're building green space. They're building restaurants. They're building a stage for concerts. But the interesting thing is, and I don't know how much of this was negotiated because it made sense versus there were leases in place, but of that mall, 3 anchor stores in the mall are staying. So Costco is staying, thank God. JCPenney is staying, and the AMC movie theater is staying. And they aren't situated in a way that I think makes it obvious that you can demo the mall around it. And so they literally have to design whatever they're building around these 3 stores that are staying, these 3 anchor stores that are staying. My guess is not all 3 of those necessarily make sense to be there, but they probably had leases.
Yeah, and AJ, help me out here, because I'm probably one of the average Joe and Janes is listening to this pod, and like, okay, I kind of get the apartments, because I've seen where you have the storefront, the sort of the retail on the bottom, and then you got the apartments up top or whatever. So I get that part. But to put a self-storage where you still have tenants in there, like I can't even wrap my brain around that, because you've got a couple of tenants, you still have leases out there. So people have a clothing store, they have a toy store or whatever. How do you insert your self-storage? People have to be able to drive up, and
you could always foreclose on them too. Like if these properties are doing so poorly that they get foreclosed upon, usually these leases can be terminated in foreclosure. But
assuming they can't, so I get that. I mean, I understand that obviously if they foreclose, you can knock the whole thing down, you can build something new, you could fine. But assuming that's not the case, and you've got like a clothing store that happens to want to stay in there because whatever, how do you get your storage to people to be able to pull up, open up the door and back up their truck and start unloading this? So that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and this is once again the problem that you have with conversions is they're not made for that. So what you have is you have a lot of the different styles and types that we would look at it, and even if we could, the way that customers would have to utilize, like think if we could only access in the front because it was surrounded by other stores. That means a tenant has to unload their stuff and walk clear to the back of the store. So what we like is you like parcels that stick out and you can blow through the walls, and we make a road that goes through the middle of the store. And that's what we've done before with retail. So we actually have 2 lanes and drop-offs in the middle of these big box stores. Then we have huge doors that are high powered. Your car pulls up, they go up, you go in, you pull off. We have to change the ventilation system to allow cars and everything to go through. And then you park and you have drop-off and loading zones in it. But you have to be able to go through the building. So if you're surrounded by other tenants, right, then it makes the units in the back devalued massively. So as a storage operator and owner, that's not good for me, right? If I'm like, why half of this isn't good?
And do you use ramps if you need to get to the second, or if I need to get to the second or third level of a mall? Is that you just use ramps to get up there? Like how do you?
You have to do big elevators, and so we like the office building that we've done like multi-story, right? And these elevators are not cheap. These are we're talking about $250,000 a piece elevators, and access in storage is a big deal. Why? Because you're carrying crap. You got to be able to access by all parts. So our entrance.
You're going to make a storage vending machine soon. Like I know they do it with cars, isn't it? What, Carvana, where you could go up to like, yeah, and you pick your car and it comes down like a little vending machine. Couldn't you just do like shipping containers and they're all stacked and you go up and you price, I'm shipping container C32, and then it goes and then picks up your container and then drops it right at the entrance. And
I like that.
If people will pay for it, I'll do it.
I have a question, AJ, question. In terms of location, and I don't know the answer, I'm not leading a question here. Is shopping malls, are those locations typically the types of locations where self-storage makes sense? I assume that tends to be expensive land because there's a lot of traffic, which you want a lot of traffic, but there's a lot of traffic for retail. Does that get way expensive for the land in general?
Yeah, it does. And one of the best things about conversions for storage is that you're in an area that's usually developed out. That means you have high density, which that's good for storage, lots of rooftops, things like that. But with that being said, the high density, we still, storage is very sensitive to supply and demand, and it's very localized. So if you're going to convert a big box store, once again, like we've talked about, 150,000 square feet, let's call it 1,200 doors or 1,300 doors, right? To utilize that space to get your numbers, that's a lot of demand you need. And if there's other storage facilities in the area or rents aren't doing well, that it just doesn't matter how much you even get the land for, it won't work. So the good thing about them is that it can be more developed areas, and that's obviously good for most retail. So if you can go in and convert, which by the way, everybody, we are converting, people are converting them, but I think it's just not a fix all. Like these malls, you just can't turn them into apartments. You just can't turn them into storage. You just can't turn them into other things because of it's a very complex equation that has to work out for it to be profitable, to make sense. And some of those parts of the equations aren't anything to even do with the mall, right? So in storage, that 3-mile radius in demand, if it's not at price levels or points that matter, it doesn't matter at all. You'll never make money.
It seems like this is a recurring problem in real estate these days. Everybody talking about conversion, using existing asset classes, inventory, and not destroying them because it's expensive to buy them at some retail value and knock them down and rebuild at retail value. But conversions are not as easy as a lot of people just assume they are. You can't just turn office into multifamily. You can't turn malls into self-storage. You can't turn this into that. And so it'll be interesting to see, one, if this whole phenomenon goes away as we get into the next phase of the cycle, when real estate cools down a little bit, if nobody's even talking about it anymore, or contrary, if people figure this out. If they figure out a way that they can economically convert from one asset class to another, or maybe governments start to give tax benefits or governments start to give utility benefits to basically make it affordable for developers to come in and convert.
Well, I think people need to pay attention to what's going on with shopping malls, especially if you're in the office space, because what we forget is that like shopping malls have been dying for a while. Like even back in like 2012, they were dying. And I think so. I was looking at a statistic that an average of over 1,100 shopping malls were closing every year between 2017 and 2022. So like they were already dying. People were already having to try and figure out what's going on with them. And offices are just kind of behind the curve. And you see a lot of similarities between what's happening with malls and what's happening with offices. What happens with malls is, so like I'm from the Philly area, and all of these like suburban malls, these smaller malls, regional malls as they call them, those are the ones that are dying. But the King of Prussia Mall, which is the largest mall in the entire East Coast, it's like, to AJ's point, it's got like 3 million square feet in it. It's thriving. It's doing amazing. And so what's happened is it's all of these flagship tenants, and they do real high end stuff. That's where the Apple store is. That's where Gucci is. That's where all of these stores like that are. They all kind of flock to this one spot, and you have a lot of experiences. You have escape rooms, a lot of great restaurants. It becomes more of a destination, and so it's basically all of these trophy assets, as you call them, are thriving. They're doing great. Well, you're seeing a similar thing happen in offices where these lower end office buildings, these C-class office buildings, these low B-class ones, they're the ones who are struggling. But these brand new trophy assets with great views and great amenities and all these things, they're actually doing pretty well. They're fully occupied. They're getting good rents. And so I think it's a very good case study for watching what's going on with malls and what the conversions are happening and who's buying these things to see what's potentially going to happen in the future with offices.
Well, a perfect example of this, Kyle, is we have where we live, we have a mall that's struggling, but then they went and developed literally 15, 20 minutes down the road, a big like outdoor mall that has shops and fountains, and it's thriving. And you're going, wait, hold on here. So the way we consume and how we consume has definitely changed, and there's too much of it. But even if you want to take and make a conversion, the price points are major problems. So our office conversion that we're doing, we got in COVID for 4.5 million. The offices, the land, it was an exit. And that was only because right when COVID and the market shut down, everybody got scared. So that property would have it was going for prior and would go for any time after like $10 million because it's 5 acres right on the exit. That would never make sense for me to buy, and I couldn't do that. So it had to be at 45% of probably its normal going rate, even though it was totally defunct, for me to enter into that to actually do a conversion that would make sense. So the price points still are very problematic for conversions because, like Jay said, they're so costly.
Well, we just got to figure out a new purpose to that all these immigrants that are coming in are going to use. See what I did there? This is how you pivot. All right, so let's move on to Mauricio's topic here, because we have over 10,000 migrants per day, most of them asylum seekers, are arriving at the U.S. and Mexico border. And with the current political climate, lawmakers seem unable to agree on the solution. So that means going forward, there are 300,000 new people every month that are going to need a place to stay. It's generally accepted that we have a housing shortage somewhere in the 3 million to 5 million home range currently, and with construction grinding to a halt, that's not getting any better. So my question is, Mauricio, as real estate investors, is this influx of people going to help or hurt our industry?
Well, Jay's already commented about this. I think it's great for real estate investors since everybody can rent Jay's apartments. But I'm going to do something that's never been done before, which is I'm going to talk about this topic without making it at all about politics, about any of this stuff. I'm going to stick to the real estate angle. And I do want to give credit before I start to our good friend, Ken McElroy, because he's actually the one that brought this to my attention. So I want to give him credit where credit's due. There's been a lot of talk on immigration over the last, it sounds like almost a year now. And everybody's kind of looking at it at the political side and the humanitarian side, which are all, very obviously important things. But I really want to just attack it purely 100% on the effects on real estate. And to your point, Kyle, we do have about 10,000 migrants crossing the border every single day. That's a fact. You can Google it. You can look at all the outlets, right? Even whether it's MSNBC, whether it's CNN, whether it's NPR, whether it's Fox News, whether it's Zero Hedge, or like you just thing, and that's pretty universally accepted that we've got about 10,000 immigrants. Texas is obviously at the forefront of this because they obviously get a brunt of it, a lot, like California as well, but Texas. So they've done a lot of their own studies. So I'll throw these studies out, but Texas, according to their studies, 170,000 people have been coming into Texas, 165,000 in California, 152,000 in Florida, 145,000 in New York. And what I looked up on a range of like total people that have come in, you're looking at anywhere between 4 million and 10 million people that have entered the country through this immigration crisis or whatever you want to call it.
Did you say 152,000 coming into New York? Are those Canadians?
Into Florida, yeah, Florida and New York. So New York, they're obviously they've been shipping. They've been putting immigrants that have been coming in, which by the way, I think is I think it's a brilliant move. I think we talked about this last year, and I just think whether you agree with it or not, I think it's just
2 minutes and 36 seconds before he got political.
Why don't they ship them to Washington? They should just ship them to DC.
It brings a problem to everyone, right? Like right now, the issue is usually at the border states. So California feels it, in Texas, primarily Florida. Not so much because you've got to basically come in through the ocean and you've got to come in from, Cuba.
There's a lot of open land out in Idaho, isn't there?
Yeah. So, I mean, if we don't ship folks, if we don't put people in buses and send them to Idaho, AJ doesn't have a problem. But, I always consider the Washington Post maybe. So Washington Post says 4 million people have come in, and then the more conservative said 10 million. So somewhere between 4 and 10 million. But, Kenny brought up a good point the other day that over the last 20 years, we've basically gotten consistently about 1 million new immigrants, legal immigrants coming in every year. And there's always a little bit of a positive, death to birth rate. So there's always an increase in population. But this is just something that, number one, it's difficult to track because obviously they're illegal, they're asylum seekers, they come in, they get the ones that do get sort of apprehended and they get processed. There's for every one that gets processed, there's a bunch that don't even get processed, get released. It's kind of hard to keep track. But the bottom line is that, whether you, again, Jay, putting aside the politics, you have an influx of these. I mean, if you think anywhere, let's just take the median. So between 4 and 10. So let's say there's about 6 million new people that have come in with an additional 300,000 people coming in. These folks obviously need what? They need housing. They need to be put up somewhere, right? And we already have a huge affordability problem. We talked about homelessness not too long ago either. So we have a huge homelessness problem. But, to me, there's only a couple of outcomes from this, right? You either have a shortage of housing that's going to occur because of this, or prices go higher because, obviously there's a demand for housing at the lower end. There's a trickle effect up. So, the lowest prices go up and then that forces the lower people to pay a little bit higher. Eventually you get to Jay's level where whatever, class that you're paying Jay, that you're offering Jay, that starts to get higher. Or number three, which is also becoming an issue, is you just add to the homeless population because there are certain shelters out there, but they're at the capacity. They're already starting to put limitations on how long you can stay at these shelters. I think it's 90 days or something, and then you got to rotate. So they really are trying to come up with really interesting solutions. One of them is literally, and New York is one of these states, by the way, that are literally trying to figure out, hey, Jay, Jay, you've got a nice little home over there. You've got a 4-bedroom house. You've got an extra bedroom in your house. I'll pay you, the government will pay you $125 a night if you could house one of these immigrants for 30 days or 60 days, right? Which is always an interesting proposition because that's usually where people put a stop to this because like, oh yeah, we want everybody to come in. But then when you say, hey, well, you want to house a couple of these in your house, people tend to think, but they're already kind of pitching the idea of, hey, they can stay in your home, we'll pay you. So it's almost like a Section 8 guaranteed government rent for you. And they can also help you out in the house. They can do some, some work around the house.
And I think they actually even tried that overseas. And what they found was
the UK and a lot of the other Europe, because remember, the immigration crisis is not a US based problem. This is already going on in Europe, especially in the UK and other countries. And so they're almost ahead of the curve. So we can almost study those countries to see what the consequences are or how they're dealing with it with a pretty decent expectation of that may be happening here. But so in the UK, for example, they're already offering these rental assistant programs where if you can open up a room in your house, it's almost like house hacking. And, you know, in a lot of these countries, you know, I think we didn't talk about this today, Jay, but like a lot of these countries, like Germany, for example, they're already in a recession. So people are already hurting for money over there. So it could be attractive for them to take somebody in.
Yeah, but they've found when they've done it in the past that people are gung ho for it for about 3 months. And then after like month 3, they get so sick of having random strangers in their house that it kind of just fizzles after that.
So the question becomes, okay, so when that happens, then the question is, and again, I really wanted to present this because I thought it was an interesting angle, and it's obviously as a real estate show, I wanted to bring this to everybody's attention. If you hadn't heard this already, thought about this, but that's the point. So even if you do have that solution and somebody bring in and say, okay, I'll accept 1 or 2 immigrants into my home and the government will pay you. Well, first of all, where does the government get the money to pay for that, right? They're going to need to borrow it, print it. You know, that's inflationary right then and there. So that's one thing to consider as you're doing your investments in real estate. But also, you know, once they're kind of sick of it and after about 90 days, it was kind of cool at the beginning, but now I got a stranger or 2 living in my house and they don't even speak the language and we have a hard time communicating, or maybe we have an issue. They get removed from that. Where are they going to go? Like, that's the issue. We don't have any housing for our existing, Jay's like, for our existing folks. We don't have housing. We have a huge housing crisis. To your point, Kyle, we're at least 3 or 4, maybe even 5 million homes short. Where are they going to go? And it's just, I don't have an answer for you. I just want to bring the awareness to folks because it really is an issue. It really is a humanitarian issue because at some point you've got to house them, you've got to feed them, you've got to give them jobs, you've got to give them assistance, like all that costs something. Somebody needs to pay for that. And at the very least, it's inflationary. And at very worst, or maybe good if you're in Jay's shoes, it's an opportunity because there are going to be a lot of government assisted programs that are going to either convert hotels into, you know, single family homes that people can stay at, or again, you might be able to buy it's almost like the assisted living facilities where you buy a house and instead of renting out 5 or 6 rooms to, you know, senior citizens, you buy a house and you can then rent out 5 or 6 rooms to immigrants that are then.
Well, that's a great point because actually, if you were watching like places like New York City that were getting overrun and that co-living space like that you were talking about, basically where you rent out rooms and have communal areas, like that was becoming pretty popular. And the problem was it was becoming popular and then all of a sudden COVID hits, right? And like we don't want people co-living with each other who aren't in the same family, and it kind of quashed the entire thing. But like if you look at like it was a trend that was happening pre-COVID, so like it wouldn't be surprising if that becomes a trend again post-COVID and as we see these issues.
And a lot of states will have to, and a lot of cities will have to change their laws because a lot, like New York, and again, just kind of not picking on New York, but I will pick on New York. I mean, I think they've passed some pretty strict VRBO rules in terms of, you know, renting your apartment on a nightly basis. But with these programs that they're submitting, they're going to have to change the ordinances and rules to allow people to rent their houses or rent their rooms on a nightly basis. But again, where does it? This is more of a question for AJ. Where does the government get its money, AJ? If they're going to start doling out, a government assisted rent for the immigrants to pay the citizens to house them?
People that don't agree to it. And I think, you know, one of the things that we got to remember is we talk about other countries and how they have learned from, this and their immigration crisis. But their immigration crisis is not like the United States. So to put this into perspective, the United States represents 5% of the world's population, yet it has taken on 20% of the entire world's immigration. The scale of the problem in the United States is baffling to the world. 20% of the world's immigrants. It is shocking in comparison to not only our population, but our infrastructure and everything else. We're not set up for it. No one is. But our how we handle it, how we process it, we can't handle it. This is a major issue worldwide, but the United States is the one that, once again, 20% of the entire world.
Well, that's a bit misleading though, because like if you just compare it to only to like basically desirable countries, like European countries and first world countries, then we're not even in the top 20 of countries as far as number of immigrants living in our country, though. So, like, yes, it's getting worse, and we have a crisis over the last year. But if you look at the longer trend, there are, even Canada. Like, I'm come from Canada. Canada is much worse than the U.S. is.
There's 45 million immigrants in the United States. 45 million.
I would argue there's more than that. I mean, my great grandparents came over here. They weren't Native Americans, so in a way, I'm an immigrant.
They define, when they do these statistics, they define an immigrant as someone who is living full time for longer. So they lived in the U.S. for longer than a year, and they were not born in the United States. That's what they consider an immigrant.
Well, that would include me. So
And me. Apparently, we're half immigrants on this podcast.
It's a hard discussion to have without being political. And
First, but to help you out though, Jay, I promise that I would not be political in this topic, but I didn't say anything about you guys want to throw in a little politics in there.
I think it has to be political to some degree, but as far as I'm concerned, I think both sides focus on the extremes. The right is like, well, we can't let anybody in because they're going to come in and they're going to start murdering the whole country. And the left is the opposite. We have to let everybody in because if we don't let them in, they might not have cable television and they're being oppressed, and we need to give them asylum. And there's a middle ground. There are a lot of good people that come into this country. And again, we're a nation of immigrants. There are a lot of good people that want to come into this country, and we need a way to sort them out. We need a way to vet them and to figure out who can come in here and who can contribute more to our economy and more to our nation than they're taking from it. I don't know what the answer is. If I knew what the answer was, I'd
We already have the answer. That's my thing, is like legal immigration. I don't know anybody that's against legal immigration.
Because we need it too. Like the problem is that our population, while it's still growing, where is it growing? It's growing at the top end. It's the old people population that is actually seeing the old growth. The only growth that we're seeing in the 18 to 55 range is immigration. If you just look at our population growth homegrown from 18 to 55, it's basically been stagnant for like 30 years. We're not seeing any growth there. We need immigrants to come in who are in that age that are going to they have jobs, they're contributing to the economy. Like, if we want to see GDP growth, we need immigrants.
Yeah, but again, I want to pull it back because again, you guys, of course, I let go of the mic and it all goes into a rail of politics stuff. But I mean, at the end of the day, I wanted to focus back. I mean, we have a fact that we have 10,000 able-bodied people coming to the U.S., 4 to 10 million people over the last several years. Those folks need to live somewhere. Pulling back to the real estate thing, and so it's like, what are the consequences, or what's kind of from a predictive standpoint, what do you guys think is going to happen to real estate, whether it's supply of real estate, prices of real estate? Because that's what we're interested in. Because if this results in, for example, if the conclusion is, hey, we got this huge demand for property now, huge demand for real estate because you have 10 million people. Let's say you take that the high end, you have 10 million people coming in. That creates 10 million more demand for housing. Again, to me, we already have a tight supply that can only mean one thing, which is real estate prices need to go up because it's all going to trickle from the bottom. Obviously the immigrants are probably going to start at a lower housing price, but that all trickles up. If that price goes up, the next level goes up, the next level goes up. Before you know it, you're a B, C, B, and A class properties. That's really the angle that I was more interested in, is just saying, hey, is this really, if you're an investor and you're looking to invest in real estate, is this another data point that says, hey, look, the odds of real estate going up over the next 3 to 5 years is this is just another tailwind in that argument.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a boon for real estate investors. I think this is going to make it harder for people that are looking for housing to find housing. But I have zero data to support this. I'm just going to go with my personal and societal biases. But what I suspect is going to happen is there are going to be a lot of people crossing the southern border who are happy to come in and work those low wage, minimum wage, below minimum wage jobs, those jobs that Americans don't necessarily want or can't necessarily fill. And they're going to get housing, and we're going to figure out a way to get them housing legally, but they're going to come in and they're going to double up or triple up or quadruple up. And yeah, somebody making $7, $8 an hour isn't going to be able to afford even a C-class property in a lot of the cities that they're coming into in the Texas cities or the California cities, but you put 3 or 4 or 5 of these people who are working hard, making minimum wage, but 5 of those people making minimum wage, they're going to be able to afford an apartment.
Well, you're going to have to change the laws for that too, though.
There's no housing right now. You've got to build that. There's a lag, right? You don't just like pull up, 10 million new dwellings for people to, or even if you say they're going to quadruple up. Okay.
But what Jay's saying is that you could take a 2-bedroom apartment, and you could put 6 people in it, and it happens. You just have to change the laws. Like Jay, we looked at one, what was it, in Kentucky or something, where basically we were looking at it to buy this one property, and we found out when we toured it that like a 2-bedroom place, like most of them had like multiple beds, like in living area, in common areas, and that was just the area because they all worked on the farms. It was the farm workers, and they had 6 people in 2-bedroom units.
We didn't buy it, but there was somebody that owned it. So somebody that bought it previously, and I would guarantee you it's sold since then. So somebody else is willing to buy it. So yeah, we may not be willing to do that. We may adhere to the laws, or maybe the laws will change, but there are going to be apartment owners out there, rental owners out there who are willing to take on this risk. And again, not being political, I think that this is going to be good for real estate investors. I think this is going to be bad for Americans, legal citizens who are looking to rent housing at a reasonable rate, because it's going to push demand up. It's going to push rents up. And so it's one of those, it's a hard thing to solve, because I'm a real estate investor, but I'm also a person, and I want other people to be safe and happy and successful. And so it's one of those that I don't know what the answer is. And I think it'll be good for me in one way, but it's going to be bad for people in general in lots of ways.
And I think that at the end of the day, you are going to, at the end of the day, here's my conclusion, then we can move on to the dreaded top 10 list. But, it's going to be, there's going to be I think there is going to be opportunity out there similar, and I've referenced it already, but like similar to folks that are doing the assisted living facilities. They're turning these, single family homes with 4 or 5 bedrooms. They're adding one, and they're housing 6 people in a home, just like student housing, for example, right? You're buying these homes and you're having 4 or 5 or 6 students living in a particular house or whatever. I think you're going to have an opportunity where you can go buy a piece of real estate, whether it's a single family home or an apartment, and rent out the rooms to different immigrants that are coming in. And I think there's going to be a demand for that product, and that's just an opportunity that you can think of as an additional real estate opportunity in your arsenal.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be opportunity. You're just going to have to keep your finger on a pulse, because we actually Jay and I looked into this with the group housing, and it's easy in some places and not so easy in other places. Once again, it's legislation and depending on states and townships and whatever, group housing is limited to, you can only have 6 people in one dwelling, and there's different regulations based off where you are. So there's going to be changes. So just, it's something, to your point, to pay attention to when those changes do come. Take a couple of second order thinking meetings with your teams and figure out, okay, when these changes do come, how's that going to affect real estate, and how can we capitalize on it? Fair enough. All right, we ready for that top 10? Mauricio seemed like he was excited. Well, we'll keep it rolling with immigration here. And to AJ's point, United States does have quite a few immigrants, but the question is, do they make the top 10 for percentage of their population that are immigrants? What do you think, AJ?
As far as total immigrants, how are you defining immigrants?
Immigrant, they have to have lived in the country for longer than 1 year, and they have to have been born in a different country.
So according to my research paper I have, the United States is the largest at 20% of the world's population.
Okay, well, I think we're looking at different things. I'm talking about percentage of their population that are immigrants. So U.S. is nowhere near the top, because the number one...
their population. Yeah. So if they have a small population and
so number one is, actually the Middle East kind of dominates the top 5. So United Arab Emirates, they have 88% of their population as immigrants. Qatar is 77%. Kuwait is 73%. What's that?
They love us in Qatar, by the way.
Oh yeah. Well, shout out to Qatar.
Hey, by the way, if anybody's in Qatar and wants to invite us to do a live pod in Qatar, just reach out to Jay and we'll make that happen.
That's right. I was there. Really cool.
Or UAE. I would do that too. Okay, I'm probably going to butcher some of these names. Bahrain is 55%. Oman, 46%. Then Singapore is 43%. Saudi Arabia is 39%. Jordan, 34%. And then you get into Australia is 30%. And Switzerland, rounding up the top 10, 29%. So the next question is, do you think the U.S. made the top 20?
Not as percentage of the population. No.
They did not. They are just outside the top 20. So the U.S. is actually currently they are at 15% of their total population is immigrants. Canada, though, did make the top 20. They are at 21%. So they were in 14th place.
It's easy to make the top 20 when nobody lives there.
There's got to be a small country like the the Isle of Mauritius or something, or some country.
Exactly, you'll make the top 5.
There's 5 people, that start. Somebody bought the island, and then it's 100%, non.
UAE has less people than Newport does.
I just thought that was interesting perspective that the United States, with 15% of their population, is immigrants.
All right, what else you got, Kyle? We're done. We're done with the top 10. What else you got?
All right. So I just got another email from BiggerPockets about their conference in Cancun this year. And I've been talking to people about going to Cancun, and some people are super happy about it, and some people are not so happy about the conference being in Cancun, which got me thinking, what is your favorite conference spots to go to? Because personally, I'm excited. I would love to go to Cancun. But for somebody who doesn't, where would they like to go? So we have Orlando, we have Las Vegas, maybe some other places. Idaho, I heard there was a great self-storage conference there at one point. Where's your favorite spot to go?
So I'm an introvert and I don't like people. But I would say I've spent a lot of time in Vegas in my life, and I've been to a bunch of conferences in Vegas. I think it is absolutely the worst place to do a conference because nobody actually cares about the conference. People don't show up. They show up late. They show up drunk. They stay out all night and they sleep through it. And it's like, if I go to a conference, I'm going to actually enjoy it and meet people and network and learn stuff. If I want to go to Vegas and just have fun, I don't want to be there for a conference. So for me, it's going to be someplace that's not Vegas-like, not Orlando-like. I like smaller places. I have not been to
Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Jay.
I was just about to say I have not been to Boise or Coeur d'Alene, but I suspect that I would love those places for a good conference.
And you're coming this year so we can do a live podcast.
There you go, and we can do a live podcast.
The thing with Vegas, though, Jay, is that if you are going for a conference for your company and your company's paying for it, I think that would probably be a pretty good vote to go someplace like that.
I own my company, so if my company is paying for it, I'm paying for it.
It's still coming out of your pocket.
Mauricio, where do you like going?
I think Qatar sounds like a pretty good place to go do a conference. What do you guys think? No, you know what? Jay would love this. So I'm with you on Jay. So if you're one of those guys that want to really focus on the conference, some conferences are on cruise ships, and you can't go anywhere on a cruise ship. You are stuck with everyone for at least 3 or 4 days.
That's a real estate guys were doing that, right? For a long time until COVID.
Yeah, the real estate guys do that. Yeah, that's how I bring it up, because I've gone to, I don't know how many of those, 10 of those. And it's great because literally you've got nowhere to go. You can't escape anywhere. So, and actually they're pretty smart too. They actually have an event in Vegas, but instead of doing it downtown, like wherever, they do it in Henderson. So it's like freaking 45 minutes away in Lake Las Vegas.
Is that where the brothels are?
Yeah, I think that's the one. That's the one you own, right? You guys own at least one brothel. Is that where it is?
I've never been there, but that is where they are. I have not, honestly. So, and speaking of cruises, I've actually recently, I haven't said this to you guys, I've been thinking the first time we do a drunk real estate conference or get together, we're doing a cruise. We're going to invite people to just come cruise with us. We'll do live podcasts. I'm
going on a cruise in like a month.
Yeah, I know. I wish that lined up with my kids' spring break. We'd be going with you.
Just suck it up. They could take a couple days off school. Look, your schools that you send your kids don't even have homework, so it's. I think they could take a day or two off.
My kids are studious. They don't like to miss school.
Well, AJ, you should come on the cruise too. Your kids, you own the school, so you could do whatever you want.
Dang right. Well, that's literally what we were talking about. We talked about before. We're like, we got to go join them on the cruise.
So where's your, other than, of course, you've already plugged Coeur d'Alene twice. Other than Coeur d'Alene, where do you like going for conferences?
Okay, so that's a good question because, I mean, Coeur d'Alene conferences are amazing. They're absolutely incredible. The best there ever was. So if I couldn't choose that to not plug it, where else would I want to go? I love ski towns, like winter ski town, half day, go hit the mountain, because everybody comes back to the lodge and it's just like you're all there together. And you can go hit the slopes, but then you come back and all night everybody's there networking. It's not a huge, so there's still an activity to do, but everybody still wants to be inside.
And if you're like my wife, while you're skiing, you have a bunch of Pick Whitneys in your pocket and you get drunk and come back to the lodge and you're already nice and tipsy for your networking.
And there's a hot tub. Usually you do the hot tub at those places too. But AJ, you're coming down to SoCal, man. We got so much snow dumped in Big Bear and Tahoe that you could do skiing for years.
Yeah, it's dumping here where I live right now. So I want to go to Southern California to not be in snow.
I understand.
All right, let's get on to the plugs. I'll start with my plug. If anybody wants to find out new and cool conferences and places to go, there's actually a new website that you could check this out. It's called Conference Connect, conferenceconnect.com. Go check out that website and you can look up conferences all over the country to go and check out. So that's what I'm plugging. AJ, you got a plug for us?
Yeah, I'll plug the podcast, Self-Storage Income. You guys want to hear more about storage conversions and self-storage in general, go check it out. Self-Storage Income.
Wait, is that another podcast? So that's different from your Saving Capitalism podcast? You got a
Yeah,
new
Self-Storage
one?
Income's the main one. We got
Wait, whoa. This one is the main one.
Sorry, when I say the main one, I mean not the one that's the most important.
Yeah, if you go check out AJ's Instagram, all he ever advertises is for this podcast. It's never the self-storage income. It's always this one.
I don't actually for that. I never post self-storage income.
But here's the thing: when I tell people about the podcast, I tell them who my co-hosts are. Everybody's like, "Oh my God, AJ is one of your co-hosts." So apparently, you are not doing a very good job of putting this out there to your network. People need to know about this.
All right, everybody, message me, and if I'm not doing it, I'll do it. Everybody, get on me. That's ridiculous. I apologize to this audience for not supporting you. That will change.
There we go. That was beneficial for all of us. Mauricio, what are you plugging?
I'm going to plug because I'm looking at it right now, and I do say real estate syndicated live and drunk real estate on there. So I've got a brand new website that I'm excited to announce called Legal Strategies for Everyone because my book is out. Got a new website. So if you guys want to get a copy of Legal Strategies for Everyone, the complete guide to covering your assets, maximizing wealth, and protecting your family, you can go to legalstrategiesforeveryone.com. And in there's a bio, by the way, at the bottom. And it says very clearly, drunk real estate.
Nice. You got an audiobook version of that yet?
I don't know. I haven't prepared one. I don't know if that means anything or not, but
I remember when I released my last book and I gave you a whole bunch of copies, yet I haven't gotten one of yours.
I don't know about a bunch of different copies, but
no response.
It's probably somewhere in his email, but since he doesn't check his email, then he hasn't noticed yet.
Okay, here's my plug. It's my turn. Apartment Addicts. So Kyle's wife's husband's wife, Ashley, and I run a mentoring community for aspiring multifamily investors called Apartment Addicts. We just relaunched this week, and we are growing the community, and it's awesome. So anybody that wants to learn how to syndicate and buy large multifamily, come check out apartmentaddicts.com.
If you do join Apartment Addicts, though, stop requesting underwriting sessions with me. I keep getting requests for underwriting sessions, and I hate doing them. So please just stop.
We have somebody in the company that does that already.
Okay. Well, I had to do one the other day, Jay, so didn't like it. All right. Well, guys, it was good having the gang back. I was happy to see all you guys. It's always fun.
Welcome back, Mauricio.
good to be back.
I'm not like Jay. This isn't the thing that I live and die by in my week, but I do really enjoy hanging out with you guys. So thanks for hanging out with me.
Wow, Jay, I love you a lot more.
My airplane bottle is gone. I really have to hit the head. So you guys all back next week?
We're here.
We are.
Yep.
Oh my God. 2 weeks in a row. Get excited. So I will see you next Tuesday.
Later.
See ya.